Restaurant Unstoppable. What the most successful restaurateurs know that you don't. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest. He is the chief baller in charge of the Meatball shop, Adam Rosenbaum. My man, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Do you know it, man?
Dude, I love that title, chief baller in charge.
We just made that up.
Did you? How recently?
Like 5 minutes.
So what's the point of this getting creative with these titles?
I mean, it's just about having fun. I mean, you can't take ourselves too seriously, right?
I love it. And I almost forgot to ask, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I am absolutely feeling unstoppable.
Yeah, man. Don't be afraid to get right on top of that microphone. Blast right into it. So I cannot wait to dive into your story. But let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
There's so many. I mean, right now, probably in light of everything that's going on in the world, I've been talking about staying positive in negative situations, and I think that staying positive when the situation's negative is not naive. I think that's leadership.
Yeah, and it's funny because I literally just had a conversation with Mario Del Pero of Mendocino Farms. Yeah,
sure.
We got together on Clubhouse, and it's coming out of the conversation already, the power of language when it comes to culture. And I think what you did to have fun with your title, to remove the seriousness, to have fun, you have to embrace it. You have to put that everywhere in your brand if you really want to walk the walk, right?
Yeah, culture is everything. Without culture, your business is dead.
Yeah, man, I love it. So where does it make sense to start telling your story? And I will preface the audience, I did not know that this interview was going to happen until this morning. And I've been out straight. So usually I give myself an hour to an hour and a half to kind of like get a good picture of how you got to where you are today. We're totally shooting from the hip. The Meatball shop has been on my radar for years now. I'm so pumped to be here. So I'm literally just like in the dark. I'm gonna be I'm probing. I'm gonna be pulling back the layers, but I'm so excited for this. So
Eric knows nothing about me. It might not even be me. I might be someone else posing as me.
That could absolutely be the case.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of you in the past, but like you could not be Adam Rosenbaum. There's a good chance you could be someone else right now.
It's totally possible.
But I trust you.
Okay, that's good.
So where does it start to make sense to tell your story? When did you break into this industry?
Oof. I mean, how much time do you have?
Oh, man, I have all night.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought that this industry was where I would end up, although I'm ecstatic that it is. For me, it was always a side hustle. Okay. It was a way to make money on the side. Part-time, I started super young. I was 16 years old, washing dishes. My cousin, Amy, who will hopefully hear this at some point, but Amy was a manager at a restaurant and got me a job part-time. While I was in school, my parents let me work as long as I kept my grades up. I could have a job.
Okay. So are you a New York native?
Yeah.
Okay.
Born and raised in New York.
Gotcha.
I lived in California for a little while, which is why the cell phone is a California number. But
gotcha.
Yeah. So Amy gave me my first job, and it was always a great way to make money on the side. I could work nights. I could work weekends. I was never a 9-to-5 guy. I mean, when I was younger, my mom was worried I wouldn't be successful in life because I couldn't wake up for school.
I lived across the street from the elementary school, and I was late every day. So I get it, man.
That's my life too. Yeah. So I think that it just kind of fell into this situation where like, wow, nights and weekends could be a job. And so it was my job. It was a job for a while.
Yep.
And I did other things, but it was always a good way to make cash quick.
So at what point did this thing start to switch from a job to maybe this is my path?
Yeah, so it was actually around, I don't want to get somber in the interview, but it happened to be timed around September 11th in New York. So there wasn't a lot of work. I was in another field thinking I was going to be an attorney. I was going to go to law school. And
how old were you in 2001? Just not to date you.
23.
Okay, so young.
22.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was young, but I was like right out of college.
What'd you go to school for?
Right after school. I went to school for criminal justice.
Oh, okay.
Pre-law.
All right.
So my path was law. That's what I thought I was going to do. My father's an attorney, so I was like, yeah, I should be an attorney. I loved it.
Yep.
And when September 11th happened, there wasn't a lot of work in New York. Period, and it was kind of a really weird time, especially for people my age at that instance. There was this uncertainty around everything, and what I realized was everyone always needs to go out and eat and drink.
Yeah.
And restaurants were bustling at that time. They were a place that was a community for people to gather. cell phones weren't working. There was a period of time shortly thereafter where it was only those Nextel. Remember those Nextel two-way?
Yeah.
Those were the only thing that worked, and the cell towers weren't working, so people couldn't get in touch with friends and family. And so what we found was they were meeting at restaurants and gathering around restaurants, kind of talking about what was going on. And for me, it was an easy job to kind of fall back into. And so when I went back into the restaurant space right around that time, I kind of had a daydream and an epiphany one day. I was like, why did I try to leave this? Why did I try to do something else?
I think there's this, obviously the stereotype associated with the industry where that it's not a real job, that it's a for now job.
For sure.
And I think it's definitely something we need to change about our industry, for sure. When I say transform the industry, I hope that's one of the things.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. I mean, it is a stigma that it's this temporary thing, right? And for me, it was kind of like this wake up call. It was like, why am I trying to fight something that I'm so passionate about? I mean, I love this business. I love the social aspect of it. I love the hours. At the time, the hours were perfect for me. I love the community aspect of it. I like the friends. I had a lot of friends in the restaurant business. So I'm like, why am I trying to fight what I'm enjoying? And I always learned from a young age, if you love what you're doing, it's never going to feel like work.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of when I went full tilt, and I was like, all right, now it's time to fucking do this.
So you had this awakening, right? That like, this is what I'm going to lean into. This. I like this. This is where I belong. This is what feels right. What changed in your life? How you started living intentionally this point on?
Yeah. So at that point, when I realized that this is something that I wanted to do as a career, it was, for me, it was about getting serious about it and then surrounding myself with the right people and starting to go after and tackle the right opportunities.
Okay.
How do you get ahead in this world? Knowing that I wanted it to be my career, I knew that I didn't want to be a bartender for, that I didn't want to, not that there's anything wrong with it. Sometimes right now I wish I was still a bartender. But you have to figure out what the next step is for you in that evolution. How do you rise to whatever role you ultimately want within the restaurant business, whether it's the top of the top or you just, you want to run the marketing department for a restaurant group.
So how did you know that the right path to climb the ladder was going after the right people? What was this intuitive? Did somebody give you advice to go surround yourself with the people that are doing what you want to do?
For me, it's intuitive. It's always been like that for me. I always knew that you surround yourself with smarter people than you and people that know how to do that particular job better than you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not riding their coattails. It's learning.
Yeah.
It's learning, and learning is growing.
It's networking. It's getting in the right circles.
Yeah. I mean, I needed to find. When I found mentors throughout the years that I respected and that I latched onto, I didn't let them go. I soaked everything I could out of them, and I was that annoying kid. I was that annoying 23-year-old kid that was like, teach me about a balance sheet in the restaurant business.
It's so important, though. And one of the things I echo so much on the show, and it's so worth bringing to the surface as much as possible, is like, don't take a job for an extra dollar. Work for free if it means getting your foot in the right door to meet the right people. And it won't. And here's the thing: if you're cut out for this industry, if you got what it takes, they'll recognize that. They'll find a spot for you. They'll make room. But you just got to get in those circles and do whatever you can. We don't put enough emphasis on the value, the face value of the people and the knowledge that you're getting, and like all that stuff. It so far surpasses what your hourly rate is.
Yeah, no, you can't. I say this to people to this day. I mean, money. The truth is that money is never a primary motivating factor. Mm-hmm. It's never. If you want to be successful, it can't be. Is money important? Of course, it's important. Everybody wants to make more money, but if you're just chasing the dollar, if you're just chasing the money, you're not going to find happiness, and you're not going to be successful. You're just going to. I have peers and friends in this industry that are, in their 40s, 50s, being a general manager, being a bar manager, because in some cases that's what they wanted to do, and that's fine. In other cases, it's because they bounced around for $3,000 more a year. Went from assistant manager to manager, $2,000, $3,000, little bumps
lateral
in salary.
moves.
It's just lateral. It doesn't. I stayed at jobs for less money than I was probably worth because I was still learning.
Yeah, for sure. So you said that the motivating factor can never be money. What was the motivating factor for you, reflecting back at this time in 2001, 2002, you're 23 years old? What was motivating you?
I wanted to be a part of building brands and, driving success through experiences and having a great fucking time doing it.
Okay. You also mentioned that you were trying to figure out what people to go after, were the words you used. At this time, reflecting back, like who inspired you? Who were you going after?
I had different people in different jobs throughout the years, but for the most part, they were, and they were not always senior to me necessarily. Sometimes they were peers that had a little more experience in different areas. I remember latching on to I always had an interest in the bar, but I remember latching on to a beverage director at one of my jobs and just trying to soak up as much information from him so that I could go study for my sommelier certification.
Okay.
And that was, I never wanted to be a sommelier as a job. It was just, I wanted to learn more about wine, learn more about a beverage program. So I latched onto him. I had a manager in a restaurant I worked at many years ago who was just amazing with people, just had should have been in HR, but was in operations. And, this person just had a natural ability to change the conversation and the tone of the dialogue depending on the person and not just situationally, right? Because if you want to say, if you want to have a conversation with someone, and if I wanted to have a conversation with you and I wanted to have a conversation with Ryan, who you all can't see, but he's our GM here at Hell's Kitchen, but I might have to say the same thing in a different way.
Yeah.
And I didn't learn, I learned that.
Yeah.
That's not something that you naturally can figure out on your own. You have to understand that people receive information and people give information differently. So throughout my career, it's just been about finding these moments of opportunity to learn from someone that knew more than I did about a specific topic. I still do that to this day. I haven't reached success where I want to be yet. It's not about title. It's not about position. It's not about money. It's about never stop learning and never stop growing.
Yes, man. I love that as one of our core values. It's the second core value after integrity is we're students of life.
See, I did my research.
Did you know? Oh,
I didn't know that.
I was going to say, no shit.
I'm just messing.
So I love this, man. So we're cruising pretty solid at 1,000 feet right now. I want you to bring it up to 30,000 feet for me. Get aerial. What were the stops, the major stops you think, the most transformative stops you took between realizing that this is your path, you need to learn, you need to surround yourself with the right people? What were the big stops you made along the way to 2010 when you opened the Meatball shop? Yeah,
so I guess the biggest steps were, there were a couple of pivotal moments in that kind of time span. One was when I made the decision to go into management, right? And
when was that?
From an hourly role. That was probably 2002.
Okay. So about a year after you commit to the industry.
Yeah.
So
about a year and a half after.
I'm assuming because you're
massive
probably
pay cut. Yeah, massive pay cut. And that's a big step. And that's, part of the understanding of money's not a primary motivator is being able to accept that and live with that and deal with it. I mean, I remember I was probably making in the $80,000 range as a bartender in New York City in the in the late 90s and early 2000s. My first manager job was $34,000 a year. I mean, you're talking about more than 100% pay cut. But I knew that if I wanted to progress in my career, I had to take that step. And I knew that eventually you'll get to a point where if you work hard enough and you stay at it, you're going to make more than that bartender would have made, ever.
Was this something that somebody taught you, or did you just know that you were going to have to sacrifice in the short term to go much further in the long term?
I think it's, I'd love to say it was someone sat me down and had the conversation with me, but I don't think that happened. It might have happened. If it did, I don't remember that specifically happening. More of I just knew it.
Yeah.
I just knew that that's what you had to do.
Yeah. Let's bounce back up to 30,000 feet. So 2002, you decide that you're going to focus on management. Maybe take us, when I say the stops, were there restaurants, were there people along the way? Were there different restaurant groups you were working at that were teaching you things? What comes to mind as I say this?
Yeah. So I worked for Be Our Guest, which
Okay.
is a restaurant group here in New York City for a long time, Steve Hansen. And I worked at a couple of those restaurants, had a few managers there that were pivotal in kind of shaping my growth. Anna Marie was one who was a general manager at Atlantic Grill. Steve Scott was another one. He was my general manager at Ocean Grill. These were people that were pivotal in shaping my future. I mean, Anna Marie, I'll tell you a funny quick story, but Anna Marie fired me. I was the best employee that they had, but I was a dick because I knew I was good at my job, and it just made me a dick. But that humbled me to understand what she did. And what she did was she pushed me to get better by firing. It's the only time I've ever been fired from a job, but I still remember Anna Marie and I love her.
Reality check.
She didn't fire me because I was a bad employee. She fired me because I was a dick.
Yeah, but I mean, technically, you need to have that emotional intelligence. You need to be a team player, and that, I mean, you might have been good at the technical aspect of your job, but you need to be a team player. And if you're being a dick, that energy is going to skunk everybody out. You're going to bring the team down. So I mean, she knew this is what she had to do to kind of snap you into reality.
Yeah,
right?
She said, I'm kicking. She's an Irish, amazing woman, and she's basically like, Adam, you're fucking fired. I was like, I'm like, what?
So this is at Be Your Guest?
Yeah.
So
at
how
Atlantic Grill.
How long were you there at Be Our Guest?
Oh, I was a Be Our Guest a long time because I was there before September 11th also.
Okay.
So I was there for a little while, and I knew Anna Marie for a number of years because when I was a bartender, she was not a general manager yet. So we'd known each other for a long time. But she fired me, gave me that swift kick in the ass, the only job I've ever been fired from, and I love her to this day for that.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
We're going to pull back the layers on this, I promise. I just want to get the big picture because I didn't get to do the research before.
Yeah, so then, so that was one, obviously. Another big moment for me was I moved to Southern California in 2003.
Okay.
I followed a girl there. We were dating at the time. It worked out. She's my wife now. We have 2 beautiful kids. But we went out there as an unknown.
Okay, stay at 30,000 feet. What was next?
Well, California was 30,000 feet. That's why I'm staying there, because that, going to Southern California with a New York work ethic that I had in the hospitality space was game changing. My career grew leaps and bounds.
And how long were you out there?
I was there for 10 years.
10 years. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is basically what brought you. This is what you were doing until you came back.
Correct.
And how many different places did you work when you were in California?
I think 3.
Okay, what were they?
I worked at Patina Group.
Okay.
I worked for Chaya.
Okay.
And I worked with Tom Colicchio at Kraft.
Okay. All right, cool. Now let's start pulling back the layers.
Mm-hmm.
So going back, Be Our Guest, Anna kind of taught you humility. Taught you that you need to be emotionally intelligent. It's not just enough to be technically intelligent, but you have to consider other people and how you're influencing people.
Yeah, she taught me to grow up.
What
basically.
else? What else did she teach you?
And her or anyone else?
You mentioned Steve Scott too.
Oh yeah, I mean Steve taught me. Steve taught me more about the restaurant business, about how it's it's a business more than just we don't just serve food on a plate and you're done. It's a working machine. All the parts have to run together. When you're kind of isolated in this one role as a server or a bartender or a cook or a dishwasher, you're kind of in your own space and you believe that your job is the only job that's going on in the restaurant, right?
Yeah.
But Steve taught me about, if you don't have a dishwasher, it doesn't matter how good of a server you are, you're not going to make any money because there's going to be no plates for the cooks to put the food on, and the guest's not going to get the food. So he taught me how to understand and respect every position in the restaurant and really understand why it's a well-oiled machine.
He helped me see the big picture of the system.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. What were the biggest lessons on restaurant business that you gathered from him?
That's when I started to look at and understand a P&L. That's when I started to learn about the business of restaurants instead of just the restaurant business.
Any nuggets reflecting back at that time that have stuck with you to this day as far as the numbers and the things to pay attention to that other restaurateurs usually don't notice or pay attention to?
I mean, at this point, the margins in restaurants are so small that everybody pays attention to everything, but that wasn't the case for a long time. I know. This is only recently where you're starting to see restaurants treated more like a business as opposed to, this is a cool project I have and my family owns restaurants. But, obviously the big ones are labor, food cost, those are the biggest ones besides your occupancy and your rent and, your general overhead expenses. But, labor is key. And, good labor can make or break your restaurant and bad labor can tank it.
All right. Anything in granular now? We're cruising at 30,000 feet. Go down to 500 feet and really give us a nugget specific to labor or food costs or a way to really increase those margins that maybe might not be common knowledge. This is where I start to pry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the prying. It makes me think back. But I mean, it's the a penny here adds up to $1, adds up to $1,000, adds up to $10,000. That's what it is. I remember learning what milking the clock meant right? And staying on the clock. The hourly employees like to stay on the clock for an extra 5 minutes, but you have 40 employees, everybody stays on the clock 5 minutes, 7 days a week.
So what's the trick to communicating to your team, helping them see the big picture? Like, hey, I know you need the money, but here's the thing: if you keep on milking it, we won't be able to give you a job. Like, how do you?
But it's pretty much like that, exactly like that. I mean, honesty is the most important policy. I mean, I'm honest, with my team to a fault, probably in a good way. I mean, I share everything with them. They need to understand, and I also empower them to run their business. Ryan, who happens to be walking around us, he's empowered to run this restaurant. He's, it's. We can guide him and we can help him, but it's up to him somewhat to make some of these decisions to understand how it impacts the greater picture of the business.
I love that. So 2003, you make the choice you're going to go out west. Was that the sole reason? This idea that, hey, I have this East Coast work ethic, I can hustle. I can. What were you thinking? Were you thinking warm weather?
Following a girl. Okay. No, I was chasing.
Oh, that's
a girl.
right, the girl. That's right.
Yeah,
always a girl.
Yeah, she was going out there, and we both tell this story differently. But since I'm the one talking to you, I'm going to tell my version. But she said, "Do you want to come?" I mean, she claims she never said that, and I said, "I'm coming with you," but she asked me.
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I never lived anywhere else my whole life. Like,
I love it.
Let's go to Southern California." So we went out there, and yeah, no, it wasn't an intentional thing of I'm gonna go make it out in LA. It was more of like, let's try this new place to live. It should be fun and awesome. And I had some friends out there, and I got out there and realized that I could hustle here because there was not the same work ethic at the time. That's changed drastically now. But when I first moved to LA in 2003, there was not the burgeoning restaurant scene that there is now. Of course, there were restaurants and there were named chefs, but not like it is. I mean, LA was not a dining mecca.
Yeah.
In 2003, 4,
yeah.
5.
I mean, that really didn't start to boom throughout the industry until 2005, 6, 7, when the iPhone came out with the sharing of social media. When people started sharing what they were doing, is when the market or the industry really started to explode. But who you said you were at the Patina Group. Was it Chia or Chaya? Chaya and Tom Colicchio. Where did you grow the most as a professional during this time? Where you thought, like, now it's time for me to go back east?
Yeah, actually two different areas. So, from a business side, I grew the most at Patina Group.
Okay.
I mean, massive company, it's 70 plus restaurants, food service operation in multiple states. That's where I learned how to become a seasoned operator.
Okay. What changed in you and your approach to management at this group that, help you go to that next tier?
I think, I was always the type of person that challenged the norms and tried to do things a little bit differently. And that's tough at a big company. And I think in some regards, people at Patina Group liked that and respected that. And that certainly helped. But it also helped me because when they challenged or pushed back or told me to go away, I kind of sat and took a step back and looked at why maybe they said that. So it just helped me personally grow.
So bring me to a time that you challenged the status quo and they pushed back. And what did you learn from that?
I think that, the best, there's so many. I mean, I was at Patina for 6, 7 years.
Feel free to move that mic around too if you want to readjust your position.
Yeah,
we're going to be here for a bit. Yeah.
I didn't want to make too much noise.
That's why I travel around these big clunky bastards.
They're cool. It's like a real setup.
It makes it look like I know what I'm doing too.
Yeah, you set up a whole system in the restaurant. Let's see. When did I challenged all the time. I think, probably a good example is we had an event that was supposed to take place, without going into too much detail because I don't want to throw someone under the bus, but without we had an event. We had an event that was going on. It's like 1,500 people, 1,700 people, catering event, and they had this protocol for the way the food was going to come out, the way the food was going to get fired. And I had a better way. I thought I had a better way, and I suggested that, and they said no, and I didn't understand. And then I watched, and this was the first event that I did of that size, that many people, synchronized serving, trying to serve 1,600, 1,700 people in like 8 minutes.
Yeah. Have fun.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, I got this. And it was not an ego thing. It was actually a legitimate idea of where to set up the different kitchens and how to stage the servers. And someone they told me no, and then this is how we're going to do it. And it didn't backfire on anybody, but it was definitely better the way that they were doing it.
Do you remember why it was better?
Yeah, because they had done it that way before, and it wasn't necessarily that there was not a better way to do it. It's just they've done it before, and each year consecutively, it got faster and faster and more efficient.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to do you really want to try something new with 17? Was it 100 or 1,000?
1,700.
But
it was not a buffet. It was a 1,700 person seated event.
You don't want to be trying new things out.
I did.
But I mean, there is something to say, like in a tested, tried way. There's security in that. How did you know that your way wouldn't have been better?
Because I watched it happen, and I was like, "Wow, that shit is tight."
Yeah,
I mean, it was like 8 minutes. Less than 8 minutes, we served 1,700 plates of food.
So you learned to kind of find a balance between knowing when to give up and to kind of lean on the experience of those around you. Any other key lessons during this time at the Patina Group?
Yeah, I learned. I mean, at the Patina Group, I learned that if you want to get ahead. I learned more so that if you want to get ahead, you got to take a step back.
Ooh, get into this.
I had to leave. I left the Patina Group in order to get promoted back to them, right? So I left when I left Patina Group the first time. I was director of operations for them, overseeing multiple units. And I was, there was a job open for a VP position, and I wanted that job, right? I mean, my goal is to just continue to improve and continue to get better. It's not about the paycheck. It's about the responsibility and the ability to contribute to the organization. And so I wanted that job. I was passed over for that job when it was deservedly mine, not an ego thing. It was actually, a lot of people said to me, you should have had that job. And, sometimes in companies that you're with for a long time, you can get taken for granted. And that's something that because of that, it's something that I'm very conscious of now as a leader, is to not take for granted my team and to make sure that they understand how much they're appreciated by me, whether that's through promotions, opportunity for learning, growth, etc. But so I ended up giving my notice. I ended up leaving, and I left Patina Group. And when I was basically, coaxed back and recruited back in a VP role.
Well, I think there's something to be learned here. I mean, like, first, knowing that, like, you sometimes, if you can't move up, you might have to take a pay cut to go someplace where there's more vertical growth for you so you can get the job you want, right? And it sounds like that's what you did. You left to go to the I want to say Chaya. I know that's not right. Is that right?
Yeah, Chaya.
Chaya, okay, yeah. So was there an opportunity for VP at Chaya Group that...
Yeah, I mean, I came in that role.
Okay.
But it was not, I mean, it was a much smaller company. So it was, again, that's where titles are so honestly not important to me.
Okay.
And they shouldn't be important to a lot of people. It's more about what you're doing than what they're calling you.
Okay. So what were you?
But yeah, I mean, it was about more responsibility, more of the ability to make a decision and make an impact in the organization.
Okay.
Rather than the title, right?
So more of a strategic role versus a management role.
Correct.
Okay. So what did you learn about strategy in the industry at Chaya?
Well, Chaya was an interesting place to work. It was a great experience, but it was so Chaya is an old restaurant concept, and they're not around anymore. But they are, over 400-year-old Japanese company. They had a place called Hikage Chaya in Japan, which was like a bed and breakfast for weary travelers when they were on horseback.
Okay.
They brought that restaurant to Los Angeles. It's almost 30 years ago now at this point. I mean, they were around when Wolfgang started.
Okay.
When Thomas Keller was cooking at Checkers. The Chaya was open, and they have a saying in Japanese, it's nimawashe, which is the meetings about the meetings. There was a lot of that there. There was a lot of, we're going to have a meeting to discuss this meeting.
I love Japanese culture. It's great.
Most of all my tattoos are Japanese.
Nice. So what did you learn about, how did this Japanese culture influence this approach to management, influence you, or am I putting too much emphasis on
No, you're not. I mean, I learned more about the Japanese culture than I did about restaurant business, but that also helped shape me as a leader.
Okay.
Because understanding there's a patience and a meticulousness and a detail and a focus that exists in Japanese culture that doesn't exist in other cultures. And there are Americans that are detail oriented, of course, but as a culture, The Japanese are very meticulous, very detail-oriented, and it's incredible to watch.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many Japanese things. One that I love is well, there's cayenne, and then there's the other one that's like, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Like right now.
Yeah.
But what else?
Next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's all stuff like that. I mean, all things like that about spatial layouts in rooms and why they're important. And sometimes it has to do with, feng shui and just like it's a general feeling or it's good luck. But other times it's actually just fucking efficient.
Yeah.
And it's right. And the way they set up a line, learning, you can learn, you can turn a restaurant into a fast food restaurant by understanding how Japanese culture, has line efficiency. I mean, everything has its place. There's a specific container for everything because it's the easiest to prep from or it's the easiest to pull from when you're going to cook. It's just impressive.
Yeah, I think that you're starting to tap into the Kaizen now, which is that idea of like constant gentle pressure, but with little changes over time. If there's a better way to do it, like always small what's the word? It's
incremental.
Yes, thank you. Incremental changes over time compound.
Yeah, it's like the bonsai tree.
Yeah.
Right. When you're carving the bonsai tree, you make little clippings, little changes. You bend a branch this way, bend a branch that way, and over time it shapes a different form of the tree.
Yeah, I love it.
It's awesome.
So how did they set you up? Because you eventually got hired back or recruited back to Patina Group, correct?
Yes.
So how did they set you up for success with the Patina Group?
Well, they reached out to me many times in the time I was gone, which was great and made me feel good. But I also didn't want to leave a job I took. I didn't take the job just to prove a point to Patina Group. I took the job to try something new and experience different things. And when it was the right time for me to make the move back, that's when I was like, okay, I'll come back.
How did you know it was the right time?
Because I had I realized that I wasn't going to get anything more out of Chaya other than the culture and the efficiency and the vibe of the the Japanese environment, and they weren't growing as a brand.
Okay,
so there was no there was just 5 restaurants and they weren't planning on opening anymore.
So you're back at the Patina Group. Timestamp this for me.
That would be probably 2006.
Okay, so about you came back.
Maybe 2000. Maybe no. Hold on. Let me do. You're making me go back so far.
That's what I do.
I like it. 2007. It would have been 2007. Yeah,
okay.
2006, 2007.
So this is still like 6 years before coming back to the East Coast, 2013-ish.
Yeah.
And you, how many years thereafter did you stay at Patina before going with Tom Colicchio?
I was with Patina for another 2-3 years.
Okay.
2 or 3 years.
So right around 2008.
Then I was with Tom for about 2 years.
Okay. So reflecting back at this time, where were you as a professional? Like what was your responsibility? Were you VP?
Yeah, I was VP of operations. I oversaw the restaurants and the market cafe division. So it was a big job for me. I was a young person in that role, which was probably new for them at the time, and also new for me. But there was, I had just more responsibility and the ability to enact real change. I went through a couple of remodels with them and was able to kind of steer the ship on some design elements and working with the art and style department, working with the marketing department.
Okay.
In a little more, not a little more, a lot more hands-on. Instead of just being kind of like a manager operator behind the scenes, like you go check on the restaurants and make sure they're doing okay. I got to be a part of some of the strategy, some
marketing,
of the decision
branding.
making. Yeah, some of the decision making. Even down to like let's look at 20 different samples of China and pick the right one that's going to fit this concept.
I love that. So what were the key lessons they taught you? Anything like specific about marketing, about branding? I mean, I'm sure there's how do you choose, right? But like one thing that you think was this really significant that maybe most other people never learn in their career.
I mean, there's a lot. Obviously, people spend their entire lives studying marketing and branding, but color is tremendously important. And that's something I learned there. Obviously, people know that color is important, but you don't always think about it.
Okay.
But color makes a vast difference on a lot of things.
Okay, let's speed up to your modern day, your current moment. You have, I'm colorblind. This looks like gray and like a
green.
See,
black.
told you.
Yeah.
Told you. So what are those? What are those? What do those colors mean to you? Why did you pick these colors? And we'll go back in time to.
Yeah. So the Meatball shop originally, when we opened in 2010, was very kind of vintagey, grandma's living room. Edison bulbs, old pictures on the wall with old frames. Reclaimed wood, everything. Very kind of old, vintagey, classic feeling, and that worked at the time. And it's such a timeless look that people started copying that and putting that in their houses, actually. Yeah. And reclaimed wood desks and all that stuff became, popular again. And so we went through that evolution. And then now this is pretty new for us at the Meatball shop, only in the last 18 months. But we went in a just a more modern, newer direction to kind of bring some life back into the space. We didn't want to go too far away. We're not a modern nouveau art nouveau concept, right? The Meatball shop it's comfort food, it's welcoming, it's inviting, it's cozy. So we wanted to find a color palette that was going to check those boxes of how can we feel a little modern and fresh, but still stay true to the brand as far as being comfortable and feeling like you're getting a hug in the space.
And I'm really excited about this topic right now, marketing, branding, because that's one of the things from the first time that I laid eyes on the Meatball shop brand. You guys just have a really fun vibe. The attention to detail, even just walking through that front door, your door handle is a meat grinder.
It's true.
So where did you learn this attention to detail?
Well, I can't take credit for all that. So Mike, the two guys that founded the Meatball shop, Michael Chernow and Daniel Holtzman, childhood best friends from when they were 16 years old. They were both delivery boys in the Upper East Side, Candle Cafe, kind of grew up in this business as well, right? Mike and I worked together in our 20s at Be Our Guest, which we talked about earlier, which is kind of funny. So I known these guys for a long time. But they, Dan was a back of house guy. He kind of took the path of the culinary, and Mike took the path in the front of house. Mike had this uncanny ability to remember everyone's name and what they like to drink and what they like to eat. And Dan was an incredibly talented chef, traveled around the country working at a lot of restaurants, staged at Le Bernardin, worked at SPQR in San Francisco, top restaurants. They always remained in touch, obviously, and Mike wanted to open a restaurant and told Dan to come back from California, and Dan's like, "No, you don't even have an idea. What do you want me to come back with?" And I don't tell the story as well as they do. They tell the story really well, but basically their idea it wasn't the Meatball shop at first. It was just they both worked at restaurants, and this is why I was also drawn to the brand in general, but they worked at restaurants where, there was all these rules and restrictions and procedures and policies that you had to follow. And I'm not talking about no sexual harassment. I'm not talking about the policies that should exist. I'm talking about why do service workers need to come through the back door, in restaurants? Why is there a separate bathroom for the kitchen?
Yeah.
Why do I have to wear this penguin suit, black pants, white button-down shirt, black vest, black shoes? There were all these questions. So they wanted to open a restaurant that was not that. They basically took a piece of paper and they said all the things that they like about the restaurants and all the things that they don't like about the restaurants and that they worked at. And they started making this list. And so, just to give you an example, Dan was like, I don't like that we have to use the service entrance. So they're like, fine, everybody comes through the front door. Mike was like, I don't like that we have to wear this penguin suit to work. And they're like, fine, no uniforms. And that's kind of how it started, right? Getting rid of all the water cooler complaints. Mm-hmm. And most important, though, they wanted a restaurant where their friends could come hang out.
Yeah.
And they had worked in restaurants that were kind of maybe a little expensive, couldn't sit at the bar and shoot the shit for a long time because they needed that table back, you know. And they wanted a place where friends could come in multiple times a week and hang out, and it wasn't expensive, but still serving great food. And so that's basically how it started. And then from there, it became the Meatball shop because they're like, people always ask, where's the best pizza? Where's the best bagels? Where's the best this, right? And whenever you asked where the best meatballs, nobody had an answer.
Yeah.
Eric's like, oh, there's a pizza place on the corner that makes the best meatballs. Oh, there's an Italian restaurant in my neighborhood to make the best meatballs. There was no definitive, the best pizza is DeFara's. The best, X, the best bagels is H&H, right? There was no... And they're like, we should do meatballs. Well, that's kind of how it started. And then they said, well, if we're going to make meatballs, we're going to make it the best we can. And so that ties into like our sourcing and all that stuff.
So this is around 2010, right?
Yeah.
So this is 2010.
So that's them.
You're still in California.
I'm in California still.
You don't come back to back east until 2013.
Permanently, but I came to New York to eat at the Meatball Shop in 2010.
Yeah, and I mean we can kind of talk like because I mean if we're following a timeline, and this is the same time, so it makes sense to be talking about this now. What I want to reflect on what you shared with us, so I think it's worth kind of highlighting a few things that comes up a lot on the show. And I've noticed there's definitely a correlation between people who create restaurants that are an extension of who they are, and when you build something that is an extension of who you are. And everybody who's listening to this is going to say it's so much easier to show up to that because it's you, and you don't have to put the face on. You're going to have the endurance you need to make it. I feel like. Plus, it's just real, like you don't. It's hard to put a face on constantly versus just being you. And I think that authenticity, people can smell it, they can feel it, they can taste it.
Yeah, everybody, this business in general is about putting on faces, right? I mean, you can have a shitty day and, right now in the midst of COVID, it's different. But in normal circumstances, you can have a shitty day. But when you go into the restaurant, you have to smile and put on a face for the guests because they don't care about your shitty day. And so it is always about that in this business. But if you can do something that you love and you can make it more about you, you're putting on less of a face less often. Yeah,
because you're gonna have less shitty days.
Correct.
Right. The other huge thing that I don't know if it was intentional or intuitive, but I don't know if they knew what a unique selling proposition was at this time. But they said, what can we do that nobody else has owned yet? That we can just do this one thing really well. And I don't know what their full menu was or what your full menu is. I could probably just look over what the full menu is. But like
meatballs,
it's just meatballs, right?
No, I mean that's the core of the menu is meatballs, and we do.
So then, what was the entire menu?
Red sauce Italian, right?
Okay.
It was there were always other things on the menu besides just meatballs, but the meatballs are at the core. It was more about build the menu the way you want to eat. So if you wanted spaghetti and meatballs, you could get that. If you want your meatballs naked with just the balls and sauce, you could do that. If you want it over polenta, you can do that. If you want it with veggies, you could do that. So it was kind of like a build your own. Yeah, the centerpiece was the meatball, but it's the way you want it. You want it on a sandwich, you want it in a bowl, you want it on a salad. That's kind of the emphasis of the business.
And again, this is usually where my research serves me to find out exactly what the approach was. But again, it's finding one thing that you can tie to your unique selling proposition. If you want fill in the blank, this is where you go. You own that niche, right?
Yep.
And then it sounds like you could also do a lot of things with just one thing, and you could kind of stretch your menu, keeping it simple, and do a lot with a little.
You can, but at the same time, there's not a lot of. If you think about it, and I know you probably know more than I do, because you're just traveling around the country talking to all these restaurant folks.
That's not true, but I mean, yeah, that is true. But I do not know more than you. I'm still learning every day.
There's not a lot of restaurants that are full service sit down restaurants that are single menu item focused restaurants, right? Most of those single item, right? Whether it's Taco Bell, Chipotle, Sweetgreen, salad, whatever the concept is, most of those are QSRs. Most of those are quick service. And so the Meatball Shop wasn't intended to be a full service restaurant at first.
Okay.
It was intended to be a quick service. Basically order at the counter, pay, take a table number, sit down, we'll bring you your food when it's ready. We didn't even have a liquor license when we opened the Meatball Shop. They pulled down the paper that was up in the window, one of them said, this is going to be a fucking disaster. Nobody's going to show up. The other one said, stop with this pouty face. It's going to be fucking epic. They ripped down the paper. There was 400, 500 people online around multiple blocks waiting to get in. Within the first day or two, people didn't want to leave. They wanted to hang out there. And so they took the person who was the cashier. They turned the POS computer around, pulled her from behind the counter and said, you're now a server. You're no longer a counter person.
Oh, man.
And that's what happened. And so then they just started as a full service restaurant. Got the liquor license like 5 months later. And that's kind of how the Meatball Shop was born. But the whole thing was bootstrapped. I mean, this wasn't like go out and raise venture capital money. I mean, Mike and Dan built the restaurant. They built the first restaurant with their bare hands. We have pictures of it.
I love it, man. I do.
Laying the wood, the foundation, the framing, all that.
Yeah. So during this time, 2010, what are you doing back in the West Coast?
So I'm at Kraft, I think, at that point.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of having a baby.
Okay.
Building a house and changing jobs.
Okay.
Nothing unusual.
And you're out on the West Coast. You're working for Kraft at this point. We don't have to spend a lot of time here, but like if there's anything worth bringing to the conversation that was transformative for you, that is key to your story before coming back to the East Coast to join forces with the Meatball shop, lay it on us.
Yeah, the most important thing I learned from working with Tom and the team at Kraft was integrity of product.
Okay.
So not that I didn't understand or appreciate that before, I certainly did.
Yeah.
But I really understood it because working directly with a chef owner that was active in the business, right, was about sourcing, foraging, knowing the relationships between where your food is coming from.
Yeah.
And that was a big piece of the Kraft philosophy. It has been a philosophy of Tom's for a long time. It's something I always respected. Back in the day when he was with Danny Meyer at Gramercy Tavern, Tom's always been true to the products that he uses and very, very supportive of the farms and the growers.
And this is right around that time where the movement of less is more was really popping off. It's not about what you can do to the product. It's about where you can, like you're saying, source it from and just let it be, let the product talk for itself.
Yeah, that was a big time for that in general. Around 2010 was like farm to table movement. All that stuff. But Tom was doing that before, right?
Yes.
That was like his thing before that.
So, I think we got to talk about Tom Colicchio. How close were you with Tom as far as mentor, mentee? Were you shoulder to shoulder? Was it once a month? Like, how close did you work with him?
Sometimes, I talked to Tom very often on the phone. He was based here in New York. There was a Kraft in LA, but we opened, I opened a couple of them with him. Opened in Atlanta, one in Foxwoods in Connecticut at the casino, Kraft Steak. So definitely spent time with Tom for sure, but he wasn't living in LA at the time. So I was kind of like his consigliere for LA.
Yeah.
But he would come out there often. He liked visiting, obviously, LA and had a lot of friends out there. So I talked to him all the time.
How did he influence you as a restaurateur?
He's just the man. I've just always been a fan of Tom.
Yeah.
And
why is he the man?
He's just real honest, and he's genuine, and he's true, and he's really fucking talented. Mm-hmm. So all those things kind of. We talked earlier about passion, and if you have passion in what you're doing, you're never going to work a day in your life. Tom's passionate. He's passionate about cooking. He's passionate about products. Passionate about food. You see it now. He's really vocal in the Restaurants Act and all the CARE stuff with Congress and, petitioning our government. And he's super active in that. And it's not, he has a bigger platform now because of the success he's had in mainstream media. But Tom's always been like that, mm-hmm. right? Before his mainstream media success, that was who he would have done that anyway. Maybe he just didn't have the same platform. So, I don't know that he necessarily taught me anything specific and tangible that I could take away as a moment in time. It was more about the respect for the industry and the way to treat your vendors.
Okay,
and if that makes sense.
So he did influence you in the sense of some of the values he had.
Yeah.
Specifically, relationship.
A lot of those values come from Danny, mm-hmm. Danny Meyer, right?
Yep.
Which is where Tom was a chef, and Danny has this whole world of enlightened hospitality,
yep.
and the 4 pillars of how you treat your, take care of your employees first, take care of your, they'll take care of your guests. Profit is last on that list,
yep.
and I've folled that philosophy for a long time, and a lot of restaurateurs have. But you take care of those other things, the profit comes.
It just happens. Yeah, and I think it's employees, guests, community, vendor, investors, I think is the order. Mm-hmm. And that's huge too. So, all right, where do you want to take it? Is there anything else dissecting before coming back to the East Coast? And why were you coming back to the East Coast? Were you coming back intentionally to partner up with the Meatball shop?
No, I actually came back. No, that's another pivot. So that's another pivot for me personally, not really Meatball shop. So I had reached a point in my career where I was like, okay, I've kind of reached this not pinnacle's not the right word, but I've reached an executive level of a job, right? And now for me, talking about continually wanting to grow and learn and develop, I wasn't sure if I was just a restaurant guy. are you can I take what I've learned in the restaurant business and parlay that into another industry or another field? So I was actually recruited in 2013 to work for a boutique fitness company.
Okay.
Which is like, whoa, crazy. Restaurant unstoppable. No, not restaurants anymore.
Right. But that's a
boutique
really
fitness.
I think there's a lot that we like. The restaurant industry is so grueling. It's so attention to detail. It's so relationship focused. It's so human that I think that we spit out really incredible individual professionals. That the skills that you learn in this industry are so cross utilized and so, just they can be applied in any vertical.
Yeah, especially in a business that's high touch customer facing business.
Yeah.
Right.
So, okay. So you landed this fitness boutique shop.
Mm-hmm.
How long were you there?
I was there for almost 3 years.
So until like 2016.
Yeah.
Until recently, not too long ago.
Yeah.
At what point did you see this as an opportunity? How did this come across your radar? I mean, it was on your radar for a while.
They recruited me. So
Okay.
they were looking, which actually, interestingly enough, but they had the foresight to try to recruit from the restaurant business.
Okay.
And said, our experience is very much similar to a restaurant, right? Which is there's a front desk, there's a check-in, there's a waiting room, right? It's that vibe of community that exists. Everyone goes into the classroom. Everyone has their own seat or quote unquote table. The chef comes out, aka instructor, teaches a class, serves a meal. Everybody gets up and leaves. You got to clean the room, flip the tables, change the towels, and you seat another seating. It's very similar dynamic.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so they had the foresight to look for someone from the hospitality space to come in and join in a kind of a chief operating officer, SVP global operations role. And I thought for me, it was more about, it wasn't so much about I need to work in the fitness industry. It was more about this could be interesting and challenging for me to see if the skills that I've learned in the restaurant business over the years really translate into leading any company for that matter, and not just a hospitality, not just a restaurant business.
So you're there for 3 years. How did it translate?
I mean, it was crazy. It was an unbelievably amazing time. I joined Flywheel. We had 13, Flywheel Sports. I don't think I said that, but that was the name of the company. It was boutique cycling.
And again,
right?
if you forgot, anybody who's listening to this show, like I literally came from one interview to another interview, and I'm here today, and I give myself usually an hour. So thank you for being patient to fill in the blanks for me. How did this experience? I mean,
yeah. So Flywheel was a massive. For me, it was startup.
Yeah.
Raised money from private equity and from family office money, like real money, and not restaurant money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Real venture capital money. And I had never been exposed to that in the restaurant environment I was at before, right? It's different when you're in like McDonald's or Chipotle in this world of like massive people with large amounts of locations. But when I joined Flywheel, we had 13 locations around the country. When I left 3 years later, we had 34.
Oh, wow.
So that was a massive undertaking to grow the footprint of that business. And, I kind of was able to lead the charge on that.
So what did you learn about scale? Sorry, I cut you short.
That's why we're talking. What did I learn about scale? I mean, the bigger you get, the harder it is to, keep things the same.
What makes it harder?
Well, it's really where, I mean, I've known this all along, but it's really where I honed in on people. And it's the people that you hire that make the difference. When you're able to operate the business remote or further away from your home base, you have to trust the people. You have to empower the people in the team to live your brand, live your ethos, respect it, and deliver it and buy into it, right? It's a little, cult is not the word, but they need to feel like you've got their back and you're on the same team and we're going to do this together. But I need you to do it like pretty much 100% because I'm not there. I'm not in Charlotte, North Carolina every day.
Yeah. So how do you know that they're the same as you? What things do you do?
You don't hire for experience. You hire for passion and drive. You hire people that want to be there and want to learn and want to grow, and then you teach them.
So in the fitness workout world, what specifically would you be looking for? To give us an example.
Well, different roles for different stuff. But I mean, I didn't hire the instructors. The instructors was a different monster. That's like hiring, not that I never hired chefs, of course, but that's like hiring the, corporate executive chef for a large company. So the instructors were hired by senior master instructors,
Okay.
and one of our founders who was instructor, the main, pivotal role. But when you're hiring for studio managers and, multi-unit regional managers, because when you populate 3 or 4 in the Atlanta area, you need a regional manager or local director of operations for that, very much like a restaurant. And, you're looking for someone that's passionate about the brand, that's excited about fitness, that wants to get, wants to build a community, because, again, very much like a restaurant business, boutique fitness thrives off the community. It thrives off the quote unquote
Energy,
regulars,
yeah.
right? And when people are loyal to a brand, a community gets loyal to a brand, you can do amazing things, because it's the power of many instead of the power of one. So you don't have to fight upstream every time you want to get something accomplished when you have an entire community behind you.
So, okay, you identified that it's a lot to do with hiring the right people that are aligned with the passion, the purpose, the interests of your brand. What other things you're doing aside from hiring to make sure that culture has legs, that culture can move laterally across a big
so training and development obviously is a
Okay.
massive one. Making sure that you're constantly, giving people the tools to do their job, right? If you can't, if something's broken, you got to help get it fixed, because if they start to work in an environment where stuff's broken or shit doesn't work, right, they start to lose motivation. So you have to show the way that you can show them that you care is by making sure that they have the tools to do their job properly. Obviously that's a big one. This, the other one is communication. And we touched on that a little bit early on, but communication is key in all of this. They need to feel like you've got their back, even if you're 3,000 miles away, and they need to know that they could pick up the phone and call you, just to ask you a question, and you're going to call them to ask them how their day was. I mean, it's about building a family and building a community rather than just building a group of managers.
So how do you create system? How do you make sure that communication's happening? How do you open those channels of communication? How do you open those channels of communication and keep them open and encourage people to use them?
Yep, you have to set some guidelines and some rules, and then you have to hold true to those. So, for example, if we would do a Thursday touch base with all the managers around the country, and all of them would get on the phone, and that has to be something that no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what's going on in this one area of the country, you have all these other people that are relying on that 1 or 2 hours on Thursday to get your attention or to bend the ear of another manager in another market. And so you have to hold those on a regular basis. You have to keep consistent to your word.
Was there structure to those meetings?
Of course.
What did that look like?
Yeah.
What was the structure?
You would talk about, basically you do an update by region, performance metrics, talk about capacity of classes, adding classes to the schedule, we'd look at true metrics, how busy a region was versus last week. We'd talk about, and then a big one we would focus on was, which I think you'll like and your listeners will like, was focus, hope, and fear. We would go around the country, and everyone, every manager had to focus on or talk about what they were going to be focusing on for that week, what they were hopeful for that week, and what they were fearful for that week.
What's
and
the
they all
point
had
of this?
to say that.
What's the point of this?
Gives them a North Star to kind of look at internally and externally. Right. So what are you focused on? If I asked you, what are you focused on for this week? If you list 20 things to me, well, I'm going to tell you that you're going to be unsuccessful at all 20 of them. If you tell me that your focus this week is on these 3 things, I'd say you got a shot to get those done. So, kind of steering their focus and energy into a more compact
it's forcing
direction.
So what's happening here is you're creating routine. You're creating, again, another great lesson from our friend Mario Del Piero. Any culture across the world, and I'm not talking about necessarily organizations or businesses, I'm talking about culture, this omnipresent thing that's around us, whether we want it to be around us or not. It's here. We all have culture. There's language, and there's routine, there's rituals. Mm-hmm. And what you have to do is you have to create those rituals, these habits, these things that happen every day in the language, focus, hope, fear. These are things that you embed and interweave into your business, that it becomes it's not even, you don't even think about it, but what you're forcing is intentionality. You're forcing people to be focused on something, to not just show up, but to show up with purpose. Yeah. And then you're forcing them to think, what am I hopeful? Where's the opportunity? Right? Where's the threat? It's essentially it's a SWOT analysis.
Correct, but it's not.
Weekly,
correct. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But it's a cultural SWOT analysis,
exactly.
right? It's a personalized I'm listening to you and I want you to talk to me SWOT analysis rather than like, let's just put this opportunities and threats on a piece of paper on a whiteboard.
But you have to will these things. They won't just happen. You have to.
No, you have to push for them, and you have to start often, right? So when I started, I remember when we first started these meetings, everyone was like, ugh, but then like 4 months go by and you forget to say, you start to close the meeting without doing that. And then, they're like chiming in being like, what about our focus, hope, and fear?
Yeah.
They start wanting it more and more. So it just works.
And whenever I use the acronyms, just in case somebody's not familiar, SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you're forcing people to do a self-evaluation regularly, and you're interweaving it into a routine, a ritual, to make sure it's always happening.
And also in the group, it's also a key part of that. It's in the group community setting, right? So a manager in Florida can hear what some of the challenges are of a manager in Seattle.
They're speaking the same language.
Correct. But they're different experiences. I mean, we have the same thing here now at the Meatball Shop. There are different sets of challenges and opportunities at this store in Hell's Kitchen versus the one in Chelsea versus the one in Brooklyn. And so having these dialogues with each other internally helps all of them.
Yeah, I'm kind of grinning over here because I'm looking at the time. It's an hour. We're like an hour and 2 minutes into this sucker. We haven't even gotten to the point where you are here in New York at the Meatball Shop. So
that'll be fast. Everybody knows the Meatball Shop.
Yeah. So every time we have like wires running across the floor right now. So every time somebody walks by, I'm like paranoid that someone's gonna hurt themselves. So train of thought, Eric. Okay, what happens from this fitness? What was it called again? The boutique, the fitness. You mentioned Flywheel. Thank you. Yeah. Why did you leave? What brought you back to the restaurant industry?
It wasn't so much that I left Flywheel to go to the Meatball Shop or to go to the restaurant business. It was more. There were some changes happening at Flywheel. A lot of us ended up leaving at the same time. There was new investment and there was a change in the direction of the business. And so it didn't work out for a lot of people, and a lot of people didn't, we talked about culture, and that kind of was gone.
Okay.
And that was a big driving force about the brand when we started it and when we were growing it. It was all about culture. It was all about the team. It was all about the people. And that was like kind of getting left to the side a little bit, and a lot of us left at that time. And it was pretty much around that time that I had been talking with Dan and Mike here at the Meatball Shop, and they were looking for someone to help kind of steer the ship. They're two like kind of entrepreneurial founders, and they needed, a third member of the Three Amigos or the Three Stooges, depending on who you talk to. But they were kind of looking for their Mo, if that makes any sense. You got Larry and Curly, and they need Mo, and Mo's not brighter than any of the other two of them. He just, for some reason, is in the position of authority. But I was a big fan of the brand from the day they opened it. I was living in Southern California at the time, as you know, but I came here in 2010 and I ate at the Meatball Shop, and I was blown away. And their culture and values and the ethos that they built this business on were things that I believed, and I kind of grew up using and respecting and understanding and appreciating. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me. I was like, fuck yeah, I'll join you guys. Let's do this.
Okay, so paint the picture of so now they opened in 2010. You kind of painted the picture of what it was in 2010, what they were going for. How had they evolved up to 2016? Paint that picture of where they had taken this thing before you had come on board.
So they hadn't really, they opened a bunch of locations, right? Yeah. Obviously.
How many locations did they get to?
5.
Okay.
Yeah. And the difference was that the restaurant didn't evolve enough in the 6 years. Not that it needed to change drastically, but there was no real kind of, what's the right word that I'm looking for? Innovation. Like they had innovation with like different kinds of meatballs and different recipes and things like that. And that existed, but the color palette, the artwork, the menu, the layout, the framework, those kind of things were the same for 6 years. And even the restaurants that have been around 20, 30 years, they're not the same that they were 20 years ago. They've evolved, they've changed, whether it's the decor, whether it's the chairs. I mean, you hear about these the finest restaurants in the country that close for 2 weeks. They're doing a remodel.
Yeah, I think I've heard it. The magic number is every 5 years you need a refreshing is what I've heard. Like that's a term, and it's like, and there's people the best of the best. They put aside a refreshing budget.
You need
budget.
a CapEx budget.
Yeah, like so, like whatever it is, 2% of total gross goes towards this bank account where you're going to drop
in 5 years,
like a big chunk of money on keeping it fresh.
Yeah.
So when you came, so they're at about that 5 to 6 year mark now. When you come back, and they hadn't freshened it up. They didn't have that foresight yet.
Correct.
Okay, so they're at 5 locations. It's still the kind of the same menu, the same brand. You come on, kind of get into one thing I love. Like I really like to talk about, especially when it comes to partnerships, is lanes. You already kind of identified that Michael's lane was more front of the house, EQ, emotional intelligence, knowing people, being the face, the that FOH presence, and then Danny was more the back of the house, chef, technique, lanes. Fill that in a little bit more for me. What lanes they were in before you got here?
Yeah, those. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Those were the lanes that they sat in. But like any partnership, and especially one with best friends, those lanes sometimes get blurred. Who's the ultimate person that's going to make the final decision? They're co-partners.
Yeah. So they hadn't taken the time to really commit to like an organizational chart and say, I'm responsible for these things and you're responsible for these things.
Correct. I mean, they did, but it was also tough to. They both were very passionate about this business. This is their baby.
Okay.
So, when it comes to a decision on,
pull that mic just a little bit closer to your face. No, you're good. And
when
you can turn it like to talk through the mic. There you go. I'll edit this part out.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
You're going to edit?
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, every once in a while.
There was, they of course had their lanes, but it's hard when you're needing to make a decision that's not really front of house related and not really back of house related. Who's going to make that decision?
And this is kind of what I'm getting in. It sounds like they recognized that they needed that third leg.
Correct. Well, they realized it a little bit late.
Okay.
Because they had already had some inroads and some disagreements that was causing tension. A disruption in the business.
Okay.
Right. And that's kind of what I walked into, not in a negative way by any means, but it certainly was not 2010.
Yeah.
And they were not.
Honeymoon's over.
Yeah, the honeymoon had ended.
Yeah,
and the staff knew that the honeymoon had ended.
Yeah,
and when you get to that, then you risk culture.
Yeah,
and you risk vibe and you risk energy. And when you don't know who's in charge and you don't know who to listen to, and mom says one thing and dad says the other, what do I do?
Yeah,
and you're just a little kid in the corner that doesn't know the answer.
I'm excited to start going into this because I feel like and side note, preface, the point of this isn't to expose right or wrong, this or that, who did what. It's just to learn from other people's experiences so we can share this knowledge so other people don't make the same mistakes. So when you came into the situation...
And do not go into business with your best friend.
I mean...
It's very simple.
Do you really... Can it work out? Cause
it can work out. Of course it can work out. But I think to your point, there needs to be pre-established lanes early on that are very, very clear. And it's okay to do that.
I think you can go into business with your best friend. And this is not for me to decide. We're here to learn from you. But I like you're saying, you have to communicate. You have to have You have to have what's the word?
No, there has to be. It's not just lanes, Eric. There has to be a boss. Someone has to be the boss.
So were you the boss?
No, that now, yeah, of course.
But when you came on, was that the point of having you there?
Yes. Okay. They hired me as. I mean, we joked about chief baller. I'm the CEO of the Meatball Shop. I am the chief executive officer. I am in charge of the entire company.
Okay.
I trump both Dan and Mike with decisions.
So when you came on, and I really don't know what the intention of bringing you on was, and that's what we're here to figure out. But were they looking? Had they had enough? Were they looking to other opportunities? Were they looking to pass the torch, or what was?
No. It wasn't so much as they've had enough. It was more so of there was no clear delineation of who was going to be in charge.
Okay, so when you come, this is what we've identified as being the challenge. You come on scene. Did you say this immediately? Did you know? Did you identify? Did they already know what the issue was?
No, they already knew. They already knew what the issue was, and Mike had taken a step back already from the business. Okay, and so Dan was really the one running the business on a day-to-day basis, and Mike had stepped back and opened Seymour's.
Okay. Did they reach out to you and say, "Hey, like, come be a part of this," or like, what did that conversation look like when they started wanting to bring you on?
Yeah, it was. We need to grow up, and we need to have a professional. Little did they know. I mean, yeah, I maybe have experience, but I'm not that professional. But they recognize that they had raised some money from an investor who has some good experience, Sandy Bell.
Yep.
Who is he's the founder and former chairman of Ruby Tuesdays.
I was gonna say I know that name.
Yeah.
That's isn't that is it from Thomas Kelly?
Probably,
it must be.
Yeah,
I think that's where it came
yes.
up. Yes,
Sandy is an investor in Mexico as well. Yeah,
okay. That sounds
a
right.
bunch of other concepts as well. He also owns Blackberry Farms in Tennessee.
Okay.
And Blackberry Mountain. But Sandy's been in this business for a long time. I mean, he started Ruby Tuesdays in the 70s in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Gotcha.
I think Knoxville. And ultimately grew to 900 and something stores global. I mean, real legitimate restaurant operator.
So was Sandy in the picture when you came on scene?
Yeah, Sandy came. So basically what happened was Sandy bought a piece of Mike's position in the business.
Okay.
And Mike took a step back.
Okay.
Mike was still on the board, still involved in the company, but not day to day anymore.
Got you.
Neither was Sandy.
Okay.
Dan was running the business. Mike and Sandy on the board, they all talked, they all met on a regular basis. There's a couple of other investors, kinds of friends and family.
Got you.
And but when I came on board, Dan, Sandy, and Mike, I met with all of them and talked to all of them, and they just needed someone to kind of come in and grow the company up a little bit.
Okay.
Turn it take it from a startup and kind of memorialize some of the kind of gold that they found here, the diamonds, like take some of that and really
the essence,
show it, like bring it to the forefront and show it and preserve it and figure out how to take that and feed it back into the team, back into the community, and then establish what we want to be when we grow up, right? Because we're still in an infancy stage of a brand, even though this brand's 10 years old, went through some rocky challenges. We're just at the start. I mean, this is not an old, tired, dated brand. It's 10 years old. I mean, people don't realize you started hearing about
11
Chipotle.
years old now, almost. Yeah.
11. It'll be 11 years in, what's today, the 4th?
I think so.
February 9th.
February 4th. Yeah.
February 9th is when we open.
Yeah.
So
almost your birthday.
Yeah, very close.
So take us through this process of what you're saying you had to do. How did you do it?
I'm not done yet. I mean, it takes a long time. But we went through a bunch of stuff. I mean, we had to, I had to do an overhaul of the team. I mean, there were a lot of inroads with the team because some sided with this one and some sided with that one. And so we had, a lot of HR issues early on. We had to straighten those out. There was a lot of mess with the books, not in a shady way, just like not great bookkeeping practices as far as like, it was two guys that started a business and you got to give them more credit than anything. I mean, it's incredible what they built, but there was no structure. The rules were like, there are no rules.
I mean, there's a lot of fun to that, but that's not scalable because you need structure, you need system, you need process.
But you can still have fun, and you can still have fun with still having some processes. Everything doesn't need to be in a rule book, right? You don't have to have a guidebook for every decision that you make has to follow these rules. But you do need to have some frame of reference and some guide, some playbook to follow.
Yeah.
The best coaches in football, they still follow a playbook. There's still they might choose the play on page 38 or page 2. But they're still following some framework.
Yeah. So let's take one of these elements and really go in and talk about the system that you chose or how to do it right. Not necessarily talk about what was wrong with it, but how to do it right, accounting. And what did you change about, like, what processes and systems did you implement here that didn't exist to make it done right?
Well, we started using real accounting software.
What?
That's one. We use Restaurant 365 now.
Nice.
We were using Compete. But I switched. We used to Compete when I started. I got them onto Compete. We have since switched to Restaurant 365.
Huge fan of Restaurant 365, past sponsors of the show, and I'm actually, when this goes live, the workshop will have already aired. But tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., after my 5-hour, I'm going to be on some really great rests tomorrow for this workshop. We're doing a demo with Provisions Concepts out of Oklahoma City. Their director of technology and marketing is going to take us through the integration between Restaurant 365 Toast and Chow Now and their app. So cool. If you're listening to this, that will be recorded. Go hang out on the network. You'll be able to find that recording in Tech Talk. Sorry, a little shameless plug there. So
it's your show.
So you give them a little bit of structure implementing technology, and you started with Compete, and now you're with Restaurant 365.
Yeah, so that's just one example. Another example is kind of the filing system and getting rid of paper and starting moving over to a cloud-based filing system for all of our, whether it's training manuals, new hire paperwork, HR. You don't need to use every technology in the world, but there are some that make your job a lot easier.
Yeah. So what was the filing? Are you still using that system that you implemented in 2016 as far as paperwork?
Well, we use Google. Yeah, we use Google Drive for everything. Basically, it's our mail server. But we've grown up and we use Harry now for source and hire for HR. Yep. We're on Restaurant 365. We do onboarding through Harry. Yeah. We don't do some of the other stuff with Harry, like time clock and all those things, but we do source and hire and onboarding with Harry.
Okay.
Restaurant 365 is another example. And then, expanding, what else do? We expanded our delivery, offerings, and, delivery is a massive business in New York, and Meatballs travel really well.
Yep.
And so I think they did a good job with delivery. Now we do a great job, changed a lot of the packaging.
Take us through that evolution of how you went from okay to good to great.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, but most important is, lots of testing and making sure that the packaging you're choosing is keeping the food and the integrity of the food in the way you expect it to be delivered to the guest, right?
Yep.
If you want to have, if you want someone to have the experience that they're having at your shop at home, you kind of have to make it look the same somewhat. Okay. So we spent months researching different to-go packaging, things like that, making sure the installation's proper, those kind of things, and then partnering with the right delivery platforms and networks, not using all of them, right? Negotiating different deals with some of them. Some of them are very expensive, charge a lot of commissions.
I mean, get into the details. I don't know if you can or not, but which of these third-party platforms were you interested in, and how should we negotiate? Let's give it to the man.
Yeah, I think you have to understand that, their main job is to get you on their platform any way they can, and a lot of times you're seeing problems with which they're voting on in New York, and it's kind of a hot ticket item, but listing you on their site when you're not signed up with them, right? That was a thing that happened years ago. There was a service in LA called YCook. This was before any of this even existed, but they would basically just have a website where you could order from any restaurant. Then they would pick up the phone and call the restaurant and order, and then send someone to pick you up. So these services still do that. They'll put a restaurant on the platform that's not actually on the platform. So there's a few that you want to be a part of. When we started with just Caviar and Postmates, and they were kind of like focused on more, high-end catering, larger catering items, parties, 10, 12, office caterings, things like that. Seamless, which is Grubhub, they were more geared towards kind of diner. I'm talking about when they first started, geared more towards like diner and fast food and quick service and like get your food delivered in New York City, seamless. Now, but they charge, they were charging upwards of 30%.
Yeah.
And the restaurant margins are terrible. You have businesses in New York City and around the country, but you have businesses that are solely relying on their Grubhub seamless ordering platform, and without that they would fail and they would close, and that's fucking scary.
So you were negotiating lower rates.
Yeah.
What percentage were you able to get down to? I'm curious.
5%.
Damn. What leverage did you have to do that?
Meatball Shop. It helps to be the brand. It helps to have brand recognition. We have 66,000 followers on Instagram. We have a brand that's. The brand is much bigger than the business.
So you're using your influence, because Grubhub knows, or Seamless knows, that if you're there, then everyone's going to be like, well, the Meatball Shop is doing it. So you're kind of like, you're an influencer in a sense.
At the time, yeah. I think now everybody's on it. Yeah. But at the time, yeah, for sure. And I think number two is, we also don't have to, we don't pay for search. right, on those platforms. So a lot of these restaurants will want to pay to advertise because they want to be at the top of the banner. Or they want to appear in the search of like Italian restaurants.
Oh, this is the most popular because they pay the most.
Exactly. We fortunately have the luxury of having a big loyal brand following, and so people were searching for us and searching us out. So, when we finally came to Seamless, when we finally had the discussion with Seamless and Grubhub, it was like, they were basically feeding it to us because they're like, look how much you're searched for on our platform.
So they knew that if they could get you on that platform, you're going to bring the consumers are going to develop habits and then find other people.
Correct.
Yeah,
of course. I mean, that is a smart model. I mean, it's not a dumb business model.
What about, did you ever charge more for those platforms to the consumer?
We do charge more on delivery than in the restaurant.
Okay.
I mean, that's a kind of a practice that most people do or should do if they're not.
So you have a mirror menu in the back end that's tied to these third-party deliveries that's pulling from that third party. So it's not tied to your in-house menu.
No, I mean, all of the third-party menus there are some integrations that exist in the tech space, but the problem is, and we can have a whole nother dialogue on that about how tech companies in the restaurant space are keeping their APIs so confidential that it's hard to integrate anything to anyone else, which makes it more difficult for everybody.
What do you mean by APIs?
I don't know actually what it means, but I do. I'm just kidding. But it's basically like the back end system for one system to talk to another. Okay. So you would have, like, if you had a scheduling software platform like Hot Schedules or Schedulefly or 7 Shifts, and you wanted it to talk to your point of sale system, right? Some of them integrate, but a lot of them don't. And a reason a lot of them don't is because they're going to come up with their own proprietary scheduling software and they want you to use theirs. So why are they going to allow you to use a third party? And this exists in the space like crazy. Otherwise, why are there no, I mean, again, this can be another like 4-hour conversation, but why can't I get an order from Postmates that then appears automatically in my POS system? I can.
You can, but they can't make money
through a third
on that.
party, but I need to do it through a third party
so they get
aggregate company.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what are they doing? Screen reading or having someone just type in the orders into the new platform, but they won't talk to each other. Why? Because Revel or Toast or Aloha or Micros won't open up their API to allow this person in to submit data through it because they want to keep that proprietary. It's a big shift that's going to happen in the tech space in the restaurant business, and there are people that are close and there are people that are doing it better, but there's no one that's there yet. And everybody wants to be the behemoth. Everyone wants to have all of it, right? They want to build a full system that does everything. We take care of your scheduling. We take care of this. Rather than just being the best at one thing, they want to be the best. They want to be average at everything.
Is that an issue?
I mean, there's workaround. I mean, there's third-party integrations that, kind of like Ordermark, which exists, which I think was started in LA, but Chowly, Bebot. I mean, there's a bunch of them out there that are aggregators. But again, it's kind of a third party to get your systems just talking to each other. Yeah. When why do you have to have another piece of technology? I feel like in the high touch customer facing business, like service industry, like restaurants, technology needs to be a disruptor in the space as far as it's going to allow the experience to improve, not disrupt from the user, right? So right now, when you have, I don't need my staff having like a 7th tablet that now like is the aggregator tablet of all this. And it just, it's a nightmare.
It gets a little clunky.
Yeah,
for the operator to play by the rules of the tech companies.
Yeah, and they have, then they also acquire each other, right? So DoorDash bought Postmates, right? And I mean, it's hard to keep track. And Uber Eats bought Caviar, but right now I have Caviar and Uber Eats tablet because they haven't made that integration yet where you can just have one tablet. So.
Man, it's a lot of
that's another. We'll do episode 1,460.
You're welcome back. If you ever want to have a tech talk, if you ever want to pull this, I mean, you have an open invitation. I love the conversation. Anything we have not discussed about the evolution of the Meatball shop since 2016, bring it to the surface. You know the company better than I do, obviously.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But you're doing a good job with
Thank you.
For no research.
Just curiosity is it's a beautiful thing.
Anything we didn't cover? No. I mean, we covered so much. I mean, I could talk to you for a long time.
Good. follow-up interview, 5 years.
I think it's just, it doesn't matter where you are listening to this podcast. I could do a shameless plug too, but we're on Goldbelly, which you saw.
Yes, I meant to bring that up.
Yeah.
So was that so what is Goldbelly?
So Goldbelly is very cool concept. Definitely took off with the COVID world.
Right.
But they basically take the best food from around the country. You're thinking of the, you want the muffaletta sandwich from Central Grocers in New Orleans. You can get it too.
Oh, sorry.
I just ordered one.
Oh my God, so good.
It'll be here. I think it comes tomorrow.
I think
actually
the way I've heard of it, it's like if you want to taste home, but you're not home, you can get food from wherever you want. Or you traveled and you tried something, like you can get food shipped to you from wherever you are.
Yeah. So if you have or if you want to send food to a family member that loves that dish, right? Yeah. So like you can send your family member in LA bagels from New York, which you can't get the same bagels in California as you can in New York. Junior's Cheesecake. You want St. Louis, Pappy's Smokehouse ribs from St. Louis. You can't get, now you can get it on Goldbelly.
Now, do you have to be, a Hattie B's or a meatball shop or a fill in the blank thing that is known for this,
I think yes. I mean, I think yes to some degree, but because you want to have the traction, right? So like if you're, if you start entering the world of ghost kitchens and this kind of stuff, I don't know that Eric, if you started a cacciatore pie company and you started making these pies, it's going to be
calzones.
Yeah. So if you made calzones, I don't know that there's enough people around the country that are going to be like, dude, you got to try cacciatore calzones yet.
There will be a time when that happens.
Well, maybe because you have this but you just answered your own question. There will be a time when that happens. That's true. And when that happens, you will be on Goldbelly. So no, I don't think you need to be the most famous in the world. There's certainly brands on Goldbelly that I've never heard of, and I'm in the business. But a lot of them people will have recognized from something.
Yeah. I think there is that kind of they are kind of riding that what's the word, like legacy brand, like
yes.
it's a taste of home.
Yes.
So you have to be kind of the staple for Boston cream pie
for that region. Correct.
Like lobster roll or like whatever it is. But it is a great tool to kind of, it's another, I think you have to earn the right to get there, but if you have, I think they're usually pretty good at finding you too. They want your business if you're one of those brands, Goldbelly.
Yeah, they've been coming after us for a long time, and it worked out fortuitously timing that it was right around the pandemic, which was great. So it's great. We like working with them, and it's and we like being able to ship our balls around the country.
I'm such a child. Okay, so
I tried to save that till the end, but there's a lot of ball jokes that happen.
Dude, I could not work here. No wonder why there was HR issues. Yeah. So
we still have the jokes. It's just not as HR. Yeah. I just fired HR. Just got rid of HR.
All right. So, I mean, I love what we unpackaged. I think there was a level of culture that you alluded to. There was issues with culture, and I was really curious about how you recovered that, what approach you took. If we could kind of start. I don't want to pry too much, but I am curious because I think that is probably a common thread throughout the industry. We need to work on our culture. Split ups happen, like what you described. Some people go with that side, some people go with this side. And how were you the glue that brought that back together?
Well, I will add also that's important to know that Mike and Dan are close friends again. And that's important to know because they're close friends again because of me. And that's not a pompous, arrogant statement.
If we weren't 6 feet apart, I'd pat you on the back right now.
But that's not an arrogant statement. It's not intended to come off that way. It's more of when they didn't have to worry about their disagreements and which lanes they were staying in, they were able to remember their friendship that started, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So, the most important thing with getting everyone back on track was just having a consistent structure in place, right? A consistent, like we talked about, focus, hope, and fear. Having a consistent framework of how we do everything, which then prompts people to have, people find comfort in routines. And this allows them to then, speak up, have an opinion, contribute to the group, formulate a thought, and
it lifts the fog.
Yeah, it lifts the fog.
Get clarity.
That's a great way to put it. But yeah, it's about letting them feel empowered to have an opinion.
Yeah,
because that's how I felt when I was younger. I wanted to have an opinion, and just because I'm 25 years old doesn't mean I don't have any good ideas.
So you focused on the issues. You corrected the issues that cleared the fog, so you could focus on.
I mean, we're still going. But it took. I mean, it takes a long time to do that. To rebuild, to kind of rebuild a broken culture takes some time. I would say it took. I would say it took almost 3 years to get to a place where, we didn't have crazy turnover. Turnover was a real problem here for a long time.
And a lot of people think of systems, processes, procedures, protocol, operations as being the polar opposite of culture. But the commonality between those two is that I think everybody wants that culture is a set of, it's a set of rituals and processes, things that we do, social norms. And that's what your systems are. They're social norms for your culture. The things that we can all agree on, that this is the right way. This is how it's supposed to be done. So we can coexist, right? And it sounds like you kind of help put that adulthood, that those boring things, the sloppy stuff that nobody likes to do, back into the industry. So there was a right way. So there was something we could all agree on. So and that will clear the fog. That will give us a sense of, we agree. This is us. This is the right way. And that's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, but in order to do that, I think the key is, in order to do that, you have to kind of slide it in the back door somewhat. You can't.
We didn't use back doors here. I'm confused.
We don't just want to throw it in their face, right? You don't want to take this is how we're going to do things from now on. Yeah. This is the way, we're having rules, we're having structure. No, because then that vibe goes away. So it's a balance of trying to keep that vibe, keep the individuality of the meatball shop while still setting up some rules and boundaries.
So how do you slide it in the back door?
Whoa, that's Eric. We just met. That was my attempt. It
was great. I'm just choosing not to lean into it because I could totally have more fun with that.
I think what you have to do is you have to package it, and you have to package it in a way that not everybody necessarily jumps into 100%, but you have to package it in a way where you get buy-in from enough people to influence the larger group.
Okay,
right?
I love it.
So does that make sense?
So so it's not a dictatorship. It's a
no way. It's a meritocracy.
You bring
first
people
of all.
in,
but
so
it's also a meritocracy.
the answer, but you have to let people realize that, help them think that they're a part of getting there.
I think so. I mean, we could ask. Ask Ryan. Ryan why he likes working here. I don't know if what he's going to say. This is totally unscripted.
There's a mic right here. You can come up. I don't mind.
Why do you like working here? I'm a little nervous right now, but
it's a fun place to work.
Why is it a fun place to work? Get up on that. Don't be shy.
Yeah, it's just there's a big focus on hospitality, and that's what I love to do. Serving people, being selfless, putting the guests first.
And my boss is a dick. That's what he's going to do.
Yeah, Adam's the best boss in the world.
I did not pay him for that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, bud.
Well done. Okay, I think we can start to think about wrapping the conversation up, but I do want to get an idea of where you guys are headed in the future. I don't want to really talk so much about how you adapted to COVID-19. If you haven't evolved to this point, you're probably not in business anymore. But what's your plan for the new normal, if you think there is one?
I do think there is one. We got a couple of things in the pipeline. First off, we're about to launch a pop-up test in Boise, Idaho, which is going to be super cool. It's kind of like not really a ghost kitchen, but it's kind of like they're handling everything, including the delivery, right? So you're not using third-party apps through this ghost kitchen, but we're going to be doing a pop-up there, hopefully by opening the end of this month, which is going to be super cool. Yeah, Boise is a very cool market.
I think just the soul, the nation, Oklahoma, Nebraska, the edge, and then on the other side, the other edge of Idaho, New Mexico, in that area on the edge is there. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of explosion happening in those markets for sure. So
we're excited. We're gonna test this ghost kitchen type thing in Boise at the end of this month. We're working on a QSR version of the meatball shop, which is going to be super cool. And that more grab and go kind of, quick service. And then we got a couple of other locations that we're looking in market and out of market for growing the meatball shop. There's a couple of markets that are prime for us to go into, and that's the plan.
Nice. Where are you going to learn more about ghost kitchens?
I talk to everybody I can about them. I'm actually In about a month's time, I'm speaking on a panel, which is all about neighborhood. It's kind of the Neighborhood Kitchen Strategy Summit. It's being put on by Momentum Events, but there's a bunch of people that are going to be speaking on it about ghost kitchens, cloud kitchens, central kitchens. It's a very interesting space. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the space, but I also think it's a risky space, and I think people need to be careful.
Why?
Well, because just, popping up a ghost kitchen concept is not the right idea for every brand. Whether or not you have a brick and mortar or don't have one yet, it's not necessarily the right or the wrong place. I think just people have to do their research and their due diligence about what they're trying to get out of their brand, what they want out of their business.
Why should somebody use a ghost kitchen?
Why should someone use a ghost kitchen? Well, we'll cut this out, but your camera stopped recording.
Oh, that's all right. I'm ugly. Yours is still gone.
Okay. I'm not sure why, though.
It's probably just because it's died.
No, it looks like you got a message or something.
Oh, son of a bitch.
Anyway.
Fuck it.
You want to fix it?
Yeah. Question was how. I'll wait for you to get comfortable.
I'm good.
Okay. Why should people use ghost kitchens, or how should we use a ghost kitchen?
Why should people use? I don't know the answer to that yet, if I'm being completely honest. I don't think there's an answer why you should or why you shouldn't. I think it's specific to your brand. So I think everybody probably says somewhat of the same thing, but there's a right opportunity and a wrong opportunity for a ghost kitchen. It could be a good opportunity to test a market that you're not in yet, right? So if the Meatball Shop wanted to potentially open a restaurant in Boston, just using it as an example, it could be interesting to go into a ghost kitchen, pump the market with delivery, options, and then pop down a store there, in 6 months or a year. It could also be detrimental because people then consider it a delivery brand, and it's not, is the vibe that you want to create in your freestanding brick and mortar space going to be detracted by this delivery model? I don't know the answer to that. I think it depends on the concept. I think it's different. I would go right now, the Meatball Shop, I would go into a ghost kitchen in New York, in an area that we don't service right now from our delivery zones, before I would open a ghost kitchen in Nashville. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're right in the sense that there's going to be kind of a hybrid. I don't think ghost kitchens are going anywhere, but I think it's going to be more. I think restaurants are going to look at this as another channel of revenue, and I think it's going to be a way to test markets. If say for example you're a restaurateur and you want to, instead of doing pop-ups to test a market, you're going to do a ghost kitchen. Yeah. I think ghost kitchens are going to be the new pop-up. You have an idea. You want to be, if you want to be really good at one thing, and you think you do that one thing better than everybody else, or that one thing is being underserved in the market, you can try to serve that need, that niche. Your overhead is going to be as low as possible. You can use the assets you already have.
Mm-hmm.
All you got to do is get on 99 Designs or whatever and just develop a brand overnight and just slap a cool looking brand on it. Get your test your recipes.
You're also bringing up part of the problem with ghost kitchens.
Why?
Right?
What is it?
Oh, just every random person's going to think they could be in the restaurant business.
Yeah,
which is a good thing and a bad thing, right? The good thing is that it might drive some entrepreneurial spirit, some new exciting brands and concepts, and people get to have their grandma's recipe in this dish now that's now available. But also, maybe they don't know what they're doing. Yeah,
but at the same time, I think this is one of my concerns about ghost kitchens are the industry. Let's be honest, with the exodus, the mass exodus of retail. We're already cannibalizing the industry. There's restaurants on every corner. There's more restaurants than people can eat at.
Yep.
And now there's going to be restaurants. People are going to have restaurants out of their apartments.
Yep.
So what are we doing? Is a real question I have, and I don't know. But I think it's going to force the bar to be raised, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Will be interesting. But
it will be interesting. I think it'll be. There's a lot of cool stuff about it too. I think brands can try different concepts within their own umbrella. So if you have a chef, if one of my chefs really has an amazing fried chicken recipe, it could be cool to utilize the Meatball Shop's bandwidth and power and ability to build some infrastructure around this chef and let him try, this concept in a ghost kitchen.
And I think the industry has made a lot of progress in injecting soul back into and I think the Meatball shop is a perfect example of this. Like, people didn't want to be buttoned up anymore. They wanted to be themselves. We started to inject soul back into the industry. And ghosts, I guess, technically are souls, but like, it's kind of soulless. Do we really want to undo all the progress we made by just like creating?
Yeah, I don't know. I hope that, I hope that it doesn't turn into the Jetsons. I mean, we need to evolve, but you don't want to get to a place where there's no more restaurants that are physical brick and mortar places for you to go meet up with friends and hang out, and then every social interaction occurs at home.
Yeah, I think the market will dictate otherwise, because I think we're realizing the cool thing about the world we live in is we're learning more and more about the human element, what people need to be happy, and that's relationships. We need look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We need to be seen, we need to be loved, we need to feel like we're growing, we need to know that we're like giving back to the community, and there's a certain element of just like it's hard to get those things and not be face to face, shoulder to shoulder, in some type of tribal situation.
We're seeing it more now because of COVID.
So I think the market is going to ask, because all these things food is going to be so accessible, people are going to pay a little extra to have that intimacy that majority of people are hungry for. So there's that blanket of like security.
I think everybody's hungry for it more so now than ever, because people just want to get out of their house and back to seeing friends.
Dude, we gotta think about wrapping up this conversation. I'm loving it so much.
See you later.
No, I do ask one question before we go to the speed round. I've asked all my guests to kind of reinforce the
speed round.
The mission. Oh yeah, there's a speed round, brother. I forgot. You don't really know. What's going on.
I didn't do
either.
my research either.
No, it's easy. You'll be great at it. So the mission statement again is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. So what is how have you transformed as a professional? How are you a better man today than when you first got started in this industry?
I mean, there's so many ways.
The most significant.
More empathy. That's the most significant, I would say. More empathetic. I'm a more empathetic leader, and I genuinely care about people.
I love that. Yeah. Awesome. Great way to wrap this up. We're back. The first question I have for you is, what is your it factor, a habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success?
Sense of humor.
What is your biggest weakness?
Sense of humor.
What is one question you ask or thing you look for when you're growing your team?
Will this symbiotic relationship, will they get along with everybody else?
I love that. What is your biggest challenge today?
COVID-19.
How are you overcoming it?
Pivot.
How are you pivoting?
This is not on your list.
No.
You're making up these questions.
Yeah.
We're pivoting by adapting. I mean, pivot is the word of 2020, and it's carrying into 2021, but we just need to adapt in any way possible, whatever that is. It's flipping a switch on a dime. We're opening 25% on Valentine's Day. Yeah. That's insane.
Did a whole episode dedicated to the pivot. There's a great book out there called Pivot. The author's name is escaping me. Sorry, you were on the show. 780 people. I lost track. What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your team? So something that's common within the four walls of your restaurants, but not common throughout the industry.
When someone walks in the front door, you yell across the room, "Welcome."
What is one uncommon code of conduct or behavior, a core value you teach your team?
Respect.
What is one book that's a must-read to make us a better person or restaurant owner?
I mean, I have to go to the classic, is Setting the Table, Danny Meyer.
And we already pulled some nuggets from that book, so I won't make you give us an example. Yeah. That book is on Audible. If you guys do not listen to audiobooks, I'm telling you, it's changed my life. I'm not just saying that to get Audible sales. Like, it's a game changer. Go to audibletrial.com/unstoppable, and thank you for your support. What is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough or often enough?
Evolve.
What is one service you've outsourced to? So this isn't a technology. This is a group of people or a person that does something really well that you outsource to
accounting.
And that is Restaurant 365?
No. That's our system, but we use a company based in Denver.
And they are?
Okra.
On-call
restaurant accounting.
And what is one technology you've adopted within your operation that's had a huge impact on communication, profitability, efficiency, anything along those lines?
tough. This is a tough speed round. There's been so many.
You can drop a few on us, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that very recently, Up and Go Pay, which is QR-based payment processing, so you could pay at the table, with your phone, QR codes. So that's like a new one that's been surprisingly well received by the community, which is awesome.
What are you using for a POS?
We use Aloha.
Okay.
And we're testing a POS called Union.
I've heard things about
at the Chelsea shop right now.
Okay.
So we're liking it.
Nice. Interesting. Yeah. I'll love to hear more about that in the future, maybe when we get you back on the show in 5 years.
Yeah, or I'll suggest that you reach out to one of the guys at Union because they're cool.
Awesome. All right. This is the last question. See, I told you my memory is horrible. This is a doozy, by the way, so like
Great.
Really listen, pay attention.
And cut.
If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy. What are they?
This is only for the business, not for my kids.
I like to say, imagine it is your kids you're talking to, and if you could impart 3 pieces of wisdom to them, what would it be?
There's so many. And I don't know if it's going to be the new normal, but you should always look someone in the eyes when you shake their hands. Put down the toilet seat.
Okay. I'll have to be better about that.
And, it's a cheesy one, but treat people the way you want to be treated.
It's a good one, though.
Yeah, but I'm sure people say it, but it's just that's how you respect people.
I have loved this conversation, Adam. We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out. That's how I found you multiple times. We finally made it happen. Who do you respect and admire in this industry? And if they were on this show tomorrow, you'd be like, I got to listen to what they have to say.
I got a few, but the one I'm going to call out is going to be Tom Dillon.
Ooh, first time mentioned on the show. Who's Tom Dillon?
Good. That's why I picked him. Tom was a mentor of mine. Tom was the chief operating officer at Patina Group.
Okay.
And he is the co-founder and CEO of Apici.
Okay.
Which is a bespoke hospitality management consultancy group here in New York, but they do properties around the country. Tom's a really cool guy. He used to be at Pret for many years. He was at Richard Sandoval Restaurants for a long time. Rosa Mexicana CEO. Nice. All around super smart guy.
That was Tom. I'm coming after you. I'd love to get you on the show. And how can we connect with you?
You can reach me.
You looked at me funny. It's Tom, right? You said it was.
No, that's who I want you to meet.
Yeah,
Tom.
I thought
how can we get in touch with Tom?
No, how can we get in touch with you?
Oh,
if we are interested in
you got to follow. You got to follow us on Instagram. It's at Meatballers. Obviously, that's the way. You can find me on LinkedIn, Adam Rosenbaum. I'm not really on social myself as much because I do it all for the Meatball Shop. But I'm thinking about getting on TikTok.
Yeah. What about Clubhouse?
I got some dance moves.
Have you looked into Clubhouse at all? You interested in that?
Should I try it?
Oh, man, it's crazy. I don't know if it's good for... we haven't figured out how we're going to use it for restaurants yet, or how to use it, because it's basically like free-form conversation. Like you get invited to a room and people just talk. And it's kind of...
That's cool.
It is cool, but I don't know how the application for the restaurant industry yet. It's great for like consulting and speeches and stuff like that. But TikTok is definitely worth looking into.
I gotta get on that.
Yeah, I love it, man. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Adam. There is no questioning. You are unstoppable.
Thanks, bud.
And we'll cut it
there.
Have
a good one.
Thank you. You too.